All right, where were we?
Welcome back to another episode of It Is What It Is. It is what it is.
Oh, is that my cue?
Yeah, you stupid.
It is what it is. You know what to do, Tom.
I'll auto-tune that. It's all right.
Do I say it now?
Do it now. Hit a note.
It is what it is.
Let's go. That's sick.
Tyler, you've done this before.
He's definitely sang in some people's ears in the past, for sure. Anyways, we got Tyler Conger in this thing. We got Ronnie Gatchi on this thing.
Tyler Conger.
Tyler Conger's a god.
If you're going to introduce this man, like...
You do it.
Don't just we got Tyler Conger. No.
Okay, what?
We have the legend that is Tyler Conger.
Congerilla, best dressed man in Birmingham for sure.
And it's not even close.
Yeah,
it's not even close.
Not close.
Listen to me, man. Because I'm really going to bring this dude in.
Dude, go ahead.
With the respect that he deserves.
Appreciate you.
Dude, when I met Tyler Conger, man, we were having a conversation with another individual that I think got a little political, maybe a little. Do you remember this, Tyler? It was around Christmas last year.
Yeah.
At one of our company events, right? And man,
Are you talking about the first time I met you?
yes,
Yeah. I mean, I remember that very vividly.
right. But Tyler, dude, you were delivering so many points so impactfully. I was just like, man, who is this guy?
And where
can I get one of those pocket squares? Anyway, I remember, no joke. I remember coming home and telling my wife, like, you're not going to believe the guy I just met.
Well, I feel like I set your life on such a course, that conversation, because you went to Nashville after that. Your kids loved it. It was just a total turn of events.
Tyler, this is a little emotional, but you made our Christmas last year. My kids believe in Christmas because of you, Tyler.
Santa Conger for sure.
Brought the magic back into the Gatry household.
Well, I like to start off these pods with just asking our guests, not necessarily what's new with you, but what's been important to you lately, like any topics, anything that you're obsessing on, anything interesting that you've been partaking in.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I'm just really enjoying living in the moment right now, and what I mean by that is, since we're relatively new to Birmingham, I'm just taking in every second of going out, like whether it's the weekend or during the week, going out to restaurants, and that's so awesome to get to experience.
Yeah, because you're living downtown,
right? Yeah. So really living in that moment, and that's been spectacular. And I've found that a lot of people, when you get to the weekends, are like, oh, we got to get out of town, we got to go do something. I'm like, I want to stay in Birmingham and experience everything it has to offer, because so much good is going on right now.
What's creating that mindset for you for trying to stay in the moment? Because I mean that's like a trendy thing right now to be.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
But with you, I feel that it's a real effort, right? So what was there any impetus for that? Was there anything kind of like a catalyst for you feeling that way to really pursue that mindset?
That's a unique question. I don't know if there was anything that kind of, it was more of a chain of events rather than this catalyst that swung me a certain way, and it was my eye-opening moment. It was just the older I got, and noticing my surroundings and how much good is going on, and just wanting to just give myself fully to that moment, not worry about trying to get somewhere with this future thing.
Yeah. Because I feel like a lot of people do that. I mean, I get to doing that a lot too, where it's instead of being kind of more present, I'm like, dude, what's that next thing? What's that next mountain I have to climb?
Yeah.
And then while I'm in the thing that should be the most important thing at the moment, I'm looking, I'm well, how does this affect that? How does this, whatever I'm doing now, how does this make that next thing better?
Right. Yeah.
I feel like everybody gets into that mindset. So what are you doing to get past that a little bit?
It's deep,
Dude,
son.
yeah, man. Let's get into this, bitch.
Well,
Take another sip and let's go.
We got heavy real quick.
Yeah, man.
Muddied the waters.
Yeah, let's go. We've been doing this for an hour, so I'm warmed up. No, but for real, man, I think it's so important because like our generation, I mean, even you.
What?
Yeah, you're a millennial.
But I'm
You're a millennial.
okay.
You're
I'm not
the
gonna argue that.
Start of the millennial generation.
You're the OG.
You're OG millennial.
I love the way you put that because I framed it to be like I'm at the end,
Ah, bro, you started it
but
all.
I'm really at the beginning.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
I love the way you put that, dude.
Yeah, anything, we're the copycat.
You created that. You carved the path for us to start. Us is what we are.
Yeah, man. Hey,
Okay.
good for you.
Like if you look at it chronologically, the years that started, you're not, you know.
Yeah, you're not the end.
You're not like 1999. You're the other side. You're the one that started it.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Hey, but don't run away from my question.
Let's get back to that.
Decided to do it.
Dang, I see what you did.
No,
there,
but
guy.
it's important to me because like I see so many people like get too focused on what's next instead of like what's here now, and this is all that's like really promised to us, like this moment, you know. So like,
Well, it's just kind of a meditative state of really being right here. Just I don't know if it's an aging thing. Like as you get older and more mature, I think for me it's been a reflection on my life where like I grow up through college and I'm like such a shithead just through college, and it's incredible that I've made it as far as
say that again.
as far as I have.
Not for you, but I mean,
Right.
I can relate for real.
Forever, when you like look back at what you've done, you're like, how did I get here? Like, what have I even done? I even think like if I'd applied myself at all in college, like if I'd have done half of anything, I could have been so much further, you know. And so you have that realization if you have the awareness to consider that, but it starts with a real conversation about yourself, like whether it's life or death kind of situations where you see the realization of like people dying. You're like, wow, you really aren't promised tomorrow. Like that's kind of eye-opening for me. It creates a greater appreciation for exactly what I'm doing right now. Just leaning in and being in that situation and focusing on that. And books on Buddhism help.
dude, what are you doing right now?
So back up just to how I got here. When I was in law school, I would look around me and I'd be in the library and I would watch people. We'd be up late studying and they'd stress themselves out to the max. And then while they're doing that, they'd be like, oh, I've got to get dinner. So they'd go get fast food and they'd come back and they'd slouch over a book and read and eat unhealthy food. And it was just like, I would take a step back and watch this. I'm like, I can't live like this. Like if I'm going to put my brain through that much mental strain, I've got to do something to counterbalance that. And so I started eating better, started exercising more. And that bled into kind of a yoga practice, which bred more into a meditative type practice. And in a meditative state or in doing meditation, you just learn about being present. Just kind of the focus of meditation is to feel yourself here and now and be with who you are, and be with the people that are around you and feel certain feelings in your body. And you kind of have this presence, and the way it just kind of changes the way that you look at the world from a day-to-day basis. And it's as simple as driving down the road and you hear a song, you're not worried about where you're getting. You're enjoying being in the car, driving and listening to that song. This is awesome. This is great right now. And the more you learn, the more you're open to accepting that and to accepting that change, the easier it is to come to you. If you continue to resist that, and not focus on it, it's harder. But if you say to yourself oh, I'm going to open myself up to this situation. I'm going to be present. I'm going to talk to you guys, or I'm going to do this or that or X, Y, Z. it changes your mindset. And so you get to focusing on that and you're like, okay, now I'm present. Now I'm there. You continue to be open, you continue to change, and you open yourself up to new things. And so for me, from meditation, it became Buddhism. Yeah. Not searching for any particular answer, just kind of opening my mind to different things in our world, whether it's religion or politics or anything, just opening up your mindset and accepting things the way they are, not trying to change things.
Well, I'm imagining what you're saying, like Tetris, like the blocks are coming, and instead of like stressing about like where the blocks should go, you're kind of just letting the blocks come, and then you're reacting to that.
Exactly.
That's
exactly. Cool. It's more of like you take what you give you and you fit it in where you can. You're not trying to force it somewhere. You can't take, like in Tetris, you can't take like the line and form it into the T mold that you need. You just have the line and you deal with it.
Make the line
Deal
work.
with the line.
Yeah.
Don't think about what's coming after the line.
Right. Exactly right.
Or even like worried about like what you have, like the spaces you have, like you make that line work for you.
Tyler, let me ask you this though, because this is so compelling. This is why I want you to do your own podcast. Before you started researching Buddhism and what I equate to living in the moment, right? What was your frame of mind before that?
That's a great question because it's unclear. You don't know because you realize how much of a fog that you're living in, because what's happening is you're reaching a clarity, it's almost like a focus, and it's hindsight 2020. So I can tell you back then that I was just living in this fog, that I was kind of day to day. It's almost like, have you ever seen the memes that it's like, if I can just get through this week, then it'll all be okay. Yeah. And you do that every week until you die. That's what it was. I totally do it. Oh my God. It's like, if I can just make it to Friday. Right. But you say that every Monday. No. You do that until you die.
But it's funny too, because like even like growing up, like especially before you have started to find this clarity and stuff, like you were like, we're still pretty young, you know. So like,
well, y'all are.
God. but like, I mean, going through college, going through law school and stuff, really, like, was there any point of like that you were just like, man, like I'm kind of just doing this, like the way that I'm living life right now has just been what I've been told that it's how to make it happen? Like, is that where do you think the fog comes from? Like, where do you think that fog comes from? Even just like that lack of clarity.
That fog comes from the way, this is a personal belief, like this is what I think it comes from, because I think this is where it comes from me. That fog comes from the people that raise you and what you're grown up in. And what I mean by that is like you could have the best parents in the world, but they're raising you, and let me say this first, I guess, is all advice. If I give you advice, it's only advice for my former self. It's stuff that I've learned.
That's facts, dude.
Right? Yeah. So,
because really, like, you can't feel, like, as much empathy as you have, like, you don't really feel like that other side and, like, the context that how that advice is going to hit them anyway. So you're really just giving it back to yourself and hoping that it applies to them.
Like, here's the lesson I learned in the situation that you're in. Here's how I would handle it based on what I know. And for me, growing up in a small town, I was raised in just this culture that's great. It's terrific. But I call it checking your boxes. So people grow up and they graduate high school, and they either marry their high school sweetheart or they go to college and they find somebody. Check box, check box. You get a job, you have children, you buy a house. Check box, check box, check box, and it just becomes this like, just this cyclical, this cyclical like box checking life, because what you do if you don't break that cycle is you have children and then they have children, and then you have this like, especially in the South, I understand you had a conversation earlier about like the South as it pertains to football. Well, think about the South as it pertains to family. Like we're conditioned to create these families, and they're great things, but family's not for everyone. There are people that shouldn't be parents, but they're so conditioned to be like like, oh, I've got to have children or I've got to have this perfect life. And then they're awful parents and they resent their children and marriages break up. Like, that's awful. But my wife and I don't plan to have children, and it's a freeing thought. Like, our marriage is much stronger because of it. And so I love kids with all my heart, but I recognize that they're not for me.
Yeah. And that's fine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My decision making has no bearing on anyone else, and vice versa.
You take that concept and you drop it on aisle 4 in Publix down the street. Now you've got a revolution, or now you've got people.
And now you've pissed some people off.
Right.
Yeah, because they can't fathom anything outside of their norm. And
I should have said Winn-Dixie, not Publix.
There you go. Publix a little fancy.
Maybe about Piggly Wiggly.
A little bougie.
Piggly Wiggly would be understanding of that.
Well, I'm trying to do something more southern.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of self-programming as well.
Yeah.
Think about it, Josh and Tyler. You know about this. As soon as college football ends, you turn on the radio, especially if you listen to sports radio, and it's like 2,062 hours until the next college football. And it's like every day it's a countdown back to college football. And like, you know, and it's like, well, don't we have anything else to talk about? Are there other sports being played?
Or like, is there other stuff happening right now? Yeah.
But I think we, I don't know if it's intentional or not, or unintentional, but we close ourselves in. And then you got to think, as the years go by, the self-closing in, we kind of program ourselves. And the next thing you know, if you're me, you're giving birth to children and you're putting them in the Alabama onesies. You're not putting them in the Auburn ones. And they don't care. Yeah, they're just like pooping all over the place. They don't care. But I've had to step back and kind of think, what am I doing? Like, what kind of value is this that I'm, putting to my own children,
I don't want to cast too much judgment though on the South as a whole. I think that's just like a human thing for sure. I mean, because I still care about a lot of that stuff. Like, how am I going to be perceived on a day-to-day basis? Like, enough to the point, like, I care about it enough to subvert it. Like, when I know there's going to be a big client meeting, like a possible client meeting, I'll make sure to put some sneakers on instead of like dressing up. Because like, I'm so aware of what the perception could be that I'm actively doing things to like fuck with it, but like,
wow.
But in doing that, I'm still caring about what people, I'm not doing it for me still, like I'm doing it to like fuck with them instead of it being like for my own satisfaction still. So I think
that's so interesting. That's coming at it from the opposite angle.
Yeah.
But it's still, instead of saying, oh, I've got this big client, I'm going to suit up, put on my nice shoes. I'm like, fuck you, I'm going to put on my sneakers.
I'm going to put on my Frank Ocean t-shirt, and if you don't hire me, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm actively sabotaging it to make sure I'm working with the people that could appreciate me for the way I am. But still, though, from like that Buddhist standpoint that you were sharing with us, like, I like your way of like, no, like it's much more like contained within like your own like process and self, instead of caring about like, how will this be seen by other people? Like, yeah.
Let me tell y'all a story, because this really shaped who I am now and who I was. So I one of my best friends to this day, like, we grew up together. I remember being really young, and man, whenever he would come over, we would just hang out, have a good time, play video games, go outside. We would just do whatever. And I'm just like, whenever it was time for him to leave, I'd always ask, can he spend the night? This is my buddy, right? Kind of like you and I, Josh.
You're like fast forwarding a lot of things right now.
But, Ronnie's been here since Thursday.
But I'll never forget this, man. I think I was like either 9 or 10 years old. And one night he was about to leave. And I remember his dad saying, all good things must come to an end. And I'd never heard that. Again,
as a young person, yeah.
I'd never heard that, but I took that and I stewed over that. And you know what that did? That impacted every moment I had with his best friend from that point on, because now I'm coming in at like, well, he's only going to be here for 2 more hours. So let's not get too excited, because he's going to have to go. Yeah. And to your point of what you learned in Buddhism, as I grew older, I found out how whack that is. Yeah. Because I was removing myself from all these good moments and quality time with quality people, because I came in thinking, yeah. And I'll use this podcast as an example. Like inside right now, I'm just like on fire because I'm with 2 of my favorite guys, right? But before, the mindset would have been, okay, I'll get a little excited, but I know there's going to come a point to where we cut the mics off and we're going to have to depart. So I'm going to focus on that part. I'm not going to focus on living in the moment.
That's exactly what we continually and constantly battle there. And it's so interesting. You may not realize this, but what you're talking about is the first lesson that Buddhism teaches you. And I'm not going to profess to be a spiritual Buddhist monk or anything like that.
That's a real Buddhist thing to say, man.
But the first thing that you learn in Buddhism is everything around us is suffering. Like life in and of itself is a suffering. And so that statement, all good things must come to an end, that's true. That's suffering. But what you learn is that once you embrace that and remove yourself from that and realize that you have a greater appreciation for the situation that you're in, you can react in a way that's like, don't get too excited because I don't want to be vulnerable and get my feelings hurt when he has to leave. Or you can say, I'm going to soak this up and enjoy every second I can, and so you create your own situation, you create your own reality. And, it's a question about being vulnerable. It's a question about living in the moment. 'Cause a lot of people don't want to be vulnerable.
Tyler, do you find that like the older you get, the easier it is to be vulnerable?
Oh, without a doubt.
Like, and that's where I am now. I'm just like, especially with me and my own self-confidence, because I have had issues with that growing up. But I'm just like, man, I don't know, this is going to sound right, but I really love who I am. I love my approach to life. I love building relationships with people. Like, I just love who I am. And I didn't always feel that way. But like, I don't know, as I've grown older, especially since having kids, I'm just like, man, like, I don't care if someone else doesn't love who I am. Like, your opinion is your opinion. And we'll just leave it at that. But again, going back to the kind of the Buddhist principles, but I'm going to build this force around me to where your opinions don't matter as much anymore. And with that, I think comes a lot of vulnerability, because I can then come out and say, well, I have issues with this and this, but they don't define who I am. I know who I am, and I still love who I am.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So, being vulnerable, especially as a young man growing up, is tough because you're not supposed to be.
Come on, man.
You're told so much. Like, I mean, especially like growing up, I was like, I'm going to start an emo band. And I was like, oh, you gay? Like, what's happening? Like, you want to talk about your feelings? Like, no, dude, like, this is just how I feel. Like, I like this. Like, I like sharing. Like, I like being open. But then there's just so many moments where you're like, it's not encouraged. And that just makes me so sad. And so I like how this culture is kind of shifting to like the less hyper masculinity thing, because why does it make you, I feel like why does it make you weaker to be open and sharing, like, and talking about what's going on in here? Like, that might be like a momentary weakness or whatever, but you end up being stronger in the long run, because then you're so much more composed and like know how to deal with those moments moving forward. And so, but I can see how that could happen to you, especially out here. Like,
and I just want to say, I don't think that's a momentary weakness at all, because if you have that self-realization, the only thing that you can control ever in your own life is the way that you react. Right? So no matter what anybody does or says to you, the only thing that you can control is the way that you react or respond to that. And if you have that realization, that shows how strong you are mentally. So you can maintain your composure. That's why when you talk about hypermasculinity, that's why males are so aggressive. They get this notion that they're aggressive, and they don't have to be. It's just that they don't know how to express their feelings. Right. Yeah. Like when they're hurt, when they're sad, that's a different emotion from anger or happiness. But they don't know how to like be vulnerable enough to express that, so it comes out as anger.
Yeah.
Like they're in constant flux with this and trying to fight against it, and so instead of crying, they get mad and break stuff. And
as a father of two young men, that kind of thing is taught, and I'll be honest, I've been guilty of teaching that.
Sure.
Just in situations with each of my sons, like, really, you're gonna cry over, and I've had to catch myself, like, I mean, it's okay if they cry, I mean, you don't want them to, you don't want them to cry for everything, but shape that differently. And this is kind of self-talk I have, like, shape that differently. Don't ridicule the crying, because if anything, Tyler and Josh, are you still here? Because I feel like it's just me and Tyler here.
Eat my ass, Ronnie.
But my question would be, and you don't know this, and you couldn't know this, but would your response still be the same if you had little girls? So, and what I mean is, if say like Abraham does something and he starts crying and you say, are you going to cry over this for real? Would your response be the same if it was a little girl? And would you say, are you really going to cry over this? And it starts with that response, you know, because if you're going to treat them the same, like if you had a boy and a girl and they both fell over and you say to them both, are y'all going to seriously cry? They're getting equal treatment. It's not a masculine or feminine type thing. Because we can teach our young ladies to be strong because they are, but we can also teach our young men to embrace their feelings, and they don't have to like put on this brave face.
Yeah. Like know why you're crying and like know how to power through it instead of just being like,
right,
you little bitch for tripping and crying. Yeah.
But now, you know, when my boys do cry, you know, it's more of a, okay, let's talk about what made you cry.
Yeah.
You know, instead of ridiculing the crying aspect of it. But dude, Tyler, you've got me so intrigued by these Buddhist principles, though.
Yeah, it's interesting. And one of the things that I appreciate, quite frankly, is just being able to talk openly about it. And what I mean by that is, again, I'll revert back to my small town upbringing. Yeah. Is if you were to bring something like that to a table like this, it's an attack on faith. And I don't want to talk about like, I don't want to get into the muddy waters of religion or Christianity or anything like that, but it's an attack on that. I'm like, no, it's just a way of thought.
I think that's the thing that freaks me out so much about people. It's like, why does me doing me affect you at all? Like, we barely know each other. You know what I mean? It's like, if you're having that conversation, it's like, if you have these beliefs, like that's not gonna stop them from going to church on Sunday. Like, you're literally not holding them back to do anything, you know? So it's like, why is that your response? Like, let Tyler be him, or like Ronnie do him, like Josh do him. Like, they're not impeding on your agency or on your authenticness as yourself either. Like, I think that's what people need to worry more about, is like, just focus on your lane almost.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and that somebody else like succeeding or killing it, like does not detriment you at all.
It's not a hindrance on
like,
you
people
killing
loving
it.
them, like who they love, and like, you know, doing their own thing. Like, you don't, like, if I have a friend who's gay and you're doing, and you know, he's doing this thing, I don't gotta do that thing.
Or doing her thing.
Or her thing. Like, that's that's who you love. Like, I don't have to participate in any of that. Like, that doesn't affect me. That doesn't stop me from loving you either, you know? So
absolutely right.
I feel like that's the thing, like here or in California or anywhere really, that's still the biggest like human issue, is like, why do I think like what Tyler's doing on Saturday is really going to affect me from my vibe today all the way over here, you know?
The bigger question is like, why can't I just love him in spite of?
Yeah.
You know, and you talk about me, a guy grew up in a very traditional Southern Baptist church, and this is an element that's been obfuscated, I think. You know, like,
word.
Thank you. I got that word.
I gotta look that up.
Tyler sends me a word of the day. No. But no, it's been hidden. Yeah. You know, and it's just like, gosh, and Tyler, forgive me, but you know, I just grew up going to church, you know, Wednesday, Sunday, you know, read the Bible, go to church or the devil will get you, da 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 da. But the church I grew up in spent so much energy trying to cast out people that, you know, were different than what they believed was the truth or the doctrine or whatever. And it's like, as I grew and as I, you know, continue to study scripture, I'm like, but you know, it says here that we got to love everybody.
That's the one thing. That's the one thing that I always come back to, regardless of the conversation that's happening, whatever topic you're talking about. If you're talking about any type of religion or faith or whatever it may be, my understanding is as simple as, I think we're called to do one thing, and that's love. Like if you are a scripture reader and you believe in the word and what it says is your one job is to love. Like that's why the verse says, "He who lives without sin cast the first stone." So throw away, baby, because if right?
Yeah, Jared Goff that shit right there, dude. Toss that thing. Fling it.
If you got me, then
Yeah,
throw
do
it.
it.
By all means.
Let me put a question right here. Why do y'all think that's so hard for people?
Like I said, to me, I still think that it's people are just so concerned with their perception out in society, and like they're just so worried about what their ranking is or whatever, like where they stand with other people. Like and the easiest way to know that they're doing well in other people's eyes is to like look at some rules, some society rules, and just see how close they can stick to that. And another way to make it easier on themselves is to look at other people who aren't like them, who aren't following those rules that they decided for themselves are their rules, like shit on them, you know? So it's like the higher up you are on this leaderboard that does not exist, like the better, like for you. Like, I don't know, that's my like, that's what I think.
I think it's that. I think that we as humans tend to judge ourselves and our self-worth against another person.
Other people, yeah.
And so if I see, the way I would put it is, if I see success or the lack thereof in another person, it brings out what I'm self-conscious about in my own self. And so when I see you being successful, I'm like, I don't want you to be successful. I'm going to judge you because I want that for myself. Yeah.
That's
you know,
what I mean. Like,
and so that's like Josh just said, it's our ranking against each other. But if Josh is successful or if Ronnie is successful, that has no bearing on my success. I want to be successful too. And it's just like, I would say like a jealousy type thing. You know, you deal with jealousy, but we also see and judge ourselves against what other people bring to the table.
Because I think too, it's so weird, like, because even when I talk to other, like when I'm trying to work with like clients and stuff, and then they're like, well, there's this other agency, like we really liked, you know, would you be open to talking, like working with them? I'm like, duh. Because for me, it's like, this is not a zero-sum game. Like just like wealth, opportunities, success in itself, quote unquote, like it's self-generating, like to me. Like, so, you know, like I always tell them, I'm like, of course, there's enough for all of us to eat. Like, if you're going to give that opportunity to both of us, let's go. Yeah. Like, all the better that they're winning, I'm winning. You know, they better be good still what they do. But, like, if they're whack, like, it's going to be an issue. But, like, let's have this opportunity for all of us. And I think that mindset that it is a zero-sum game, that there is only enough to go around, like, there's not enough to go around, could be, like, generating that myth in people that you got to be one step ahead of the dude next door, or else you're not gonna get none.
Yeah, you're not winning.
And that's very American. Like,
absolutely, that's what I was gonna say.
Like,
you took it right out of me.
American as hell, dude. Because they don't think that way in Europe.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say is I've never ever experienced the downside of helping someone. I've never experienced a loss by helping someone else do something, whether it's introduce them to someone, whether it's, you know, treat them to a meal or whatever, just helping someone in whatever way it may be, making some type of connection, it always kind of comes back. And maybe it's karma, maybe it's not. But
even if it doesn't, for me, it's just like, dude, that feeling I get, and I could think about
selfishly too. I was gonna say that same thing. Like, even without the greater eudaimonia that's created out of this, like, you know, like a greater good, you know, selfishly too, it like works to your advantage. Like, one, it makes you feel better, but also, man, you look like the better guy. Like, all these other motherfuckers.
It's never gotten that level for me, just because I'm so focused on that feeling I get when I can do something great for somebody else. Like,
I'm a piece of shit, so like, I'm like, yeah, how does this make me look?
It's just I don't, and I've been in you know, opposite situations to where, you know, I really have an opportunity to like really mess somebody over, but I know I'm going to have trouble sleeping at night if I were to act on that, versus let me see how I can really make the best out of the situation and how I can really be a blessing to somebody. I'm sleeping like a baby at night for that. You know, it's just that feeling is a feeling you can't even put into words, you know?
I think it's serotonin.
Oh, he just put into a word. Well played, sir. Send me that word tomorrow, Tyler.
Release of serotonin I get that when I help someone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that half a pill of Xan. Like, it's not. It's not that. Oh,
Definitely not the Xan.
Sorry, guys. Oh, okay. Damn, dude, that's heavy, man. That's cool. That's some real talk, though. I think that's a good place to end, everybody. Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you, Tyler, for joining me on the It Is What It Is podcast. Ronnie, where can people find you on social media if they want to follow you?
Oh my goodness. If you're having trouble sleeping at night, search at Ronnie Gatry. My content will bore you to death.
Then you fall asleep. You don't need those Dannies.
Exactly.
Tyler,
Holistic
do you want people to find you on social media?
God, do I ever? If you're trying to holla, it's
Slide in those DMs. Sorry, Jess.
Slide in those DMs. TM Conger. That's where you'll find me. That's CONGER, like I tell everybody else.
Oh, yeah, I guess my name is unconventional. RONNIEGATREYXY. Not the XY. I feel like it's
Oh, you
like
sound Ronnie with a Y. Yeah, that's true. With an IE.
RONNIEGATREY.
Well, anyways, thank you guys for joining me on this podcast. Everybody, thank you for watching. Look out for that next one. It is what it is.